This is Dr. Grande. Today's question is, can I analyze the case of Sheldon Johnson? Just a reminder, I'm not diagnosing anybody in this video, only speculating about what could be happening in a situation like this. If you enjoyed this video, please like it, subscribe to my channel, and consider supporting me on Patreon. I will put the link to Patreon in the description for this video. First, I'll look at the background of this case, move to the timeline of the crime, then offer my analysis. Sheldon Preston Johnson Jr. was born on May 6, 1975, in Brooklyn, New York. He grew up in East Harlem and lived in poverty. His father was black and his mother was white. Both his parents were deaf. In 1985, when Sheldon was in 5th grade, he was arrested after attempting to stab his math teacher and successfully spraying the teacher with a fire extinguisher. He spent time in 2 different mental health facilities where he was treated with Haldol, lithium, Thorazine, and other psychotropic medication. Sheldon claimed he was victimized by a mental health professional and another staff member. He escaped from a facility and became a squatter. When he was 12 years old, he was recruited to work in the lucrative illegal drug distribution industry. Sheldon was arrested several times for drug-related offenses. In 1993, he and his girlfriend had a son. In 1994, Sheldon was arrested for drug trafficking, kidnapping, and other crimes. After spending 2 years in jail, he was acquitted. On December 21, 1997, Sheldon was charged with attempted murder and robbery. He had shot a man who he claimed owed him money, but the man survived. Sheldon was offered an excellent plea deal considering his extensive criminal history, 23 years in prison. He was unhappy with this offer and counter-offered with 15 years. After his counter-offer was rejected, Sheldon went to trial. He was convicted in 1999 and sentenced to 50 years in prison. Originally, he was not eligible for parole until serving at least 41 years. After having unpleasant experiences in prison, like being placed in solitary confinement, Sheldon decided to become a model prisoner. He earned a GED, an associate's degree in liberal arts, and a bachelor's degree in behavioral science. He was also active in a few other prison programs and helped inmates in various ways. On May 4, 2023, after serving only 25 years of his sentence, he was released from prison. He was able to get out early despite the judge originally ordering that he serve at least 41 years. Sheldon went to work as a client advocate for a law firm called Queen's Defenders, which is known for community outreach in addition to legal services. On February 1, 2024, Sheldon Johnson appeared on the Joe Rogan Experience. A civil rights attorney named Josh Dubin was also on the show. During this episode, Sheldon talked about his tough time growing up, his extensive criminal history, and his remarkable transformation in prison. He also discussed how the criminal justice system was broken and indicated that he was a victim of a terrible injustice. Sheldon was lavished with praise on the show for turning his life around and being an excellent example for others. His story was one of unparalleled success and proof that career criminals could become productive members of society and permanently discontinue their antisocial activity. The episode promoted the idea that one thing was certain: Sheldon would never commit another serious crime again. Now moving to the timeline of the crime. On March 5, 2024, at about 8:25 p.m., the police responded to the apartment of 44-year-old Colin Small at 979 Summit Avenue in the Bronx, New York. The building superintendent had contacted them after growing concerned about Colin's well-being. Neighbors said they heard 2 loud bangs, and a moment later, 2 more loud bangs. One neighbor reported hearing a man pleading for his life, yelling something like, "I have a family." The police encountered Sheldon Johnson in Colin's apartment. When they searched the apartment, they found the remains of Colin Small. His torso and his foot were discovered in a blue bin. His legs, one of his arms, his other foot, and his head were found in a freezer. Colin's head had sustained a bullet wound. During their investigation, the police learned that Sheldon had visited Colin's apartment several times. Sheldon had cleaning supplies with him and carried a blue bin into the apartment. He had been seen driving Colin's blue Audi. Later, he returned to the apartment in an Uber. At this time, Sheldon was wearing a blonde wig. On March 7, 2024, Sheldon Johnson was arrested and charged with second-degree murder, manslaughter, criminal possession of a weapon, and concealment of a human corpse. As he was being led out of the police station, Sheldon yelled, "I'm innocent." Referring to Sheldon, his father gave a statement to the media, quote, "I thought he did well in prison. He studied. I was happy he got out of jail. I thought he was reformed," unquote. Now moving to my analysis. Here are my thoughts on a few areas that stood out to me in this case. Item number 1. The murder victim in this case, Colin Small, was a dangerous career criminal. He had been charged with drug offenses and robbery. In October of 2018, he was released from prison after serving 10 years for felony assault. Sheldon and Colin were longtime friends, having met in prison years earlier. They may have reunited and reminisced about the good times they spent incarcerated. It appears as though their remembering time somehow descended into a dismembering crime. Item number 2. As I mentioned, Sheldon Johnson appeared on the Joe Rogan Experience, where he offered his account of how he became a victim of the criminal justice system. There was a lot of minimizing going on during Sheldon's narrative. For example, he was telling a story about how he robbed a man and his girlfriend. He was asked if the man was physically harmed. Sheldon said the man did not get touched. Rather, he was only roughed up a little bit. According to Sheldon, the victim ended up getting 2 stitches, but Sheldon indicated that he did not personally cause the wound, which required the stitches. Rather, a conspirator of his did. At other points in his narrative, Sheldon mentioned how he caught charges, as if criminal charges are airborne and somehow strike innocent people like a missile. When Sheldon talked about his membership in the Bloods gang, he indicated that he was a big shot and a high-ranking member. Despite this, he walked away from the gang in 2005. He claimed the gang members were happy to see him leave because he was a rule follower who would strictly enforce the gang regulations. There is the sense that Sheldon was trying to portray himself as an honorable and principled leader who was so tough and powerful that no gang member would dare challenge him. I find it curious that he was able to distance himself from the gang so easily. Most gangs are not known for their generous retirement plans. Their exit interviews often involve a permanent exit from this world. Item number 3. Sheldon talked about how he transformed from being a violent offender into a productive member of society. He knew that he had to figure out how to be his best. He stated, quote, "I really said, I have to change my life. I have to change my life. I just can't do this. I had a wife. I had kids. I had family still. My son was growing up. He was hearing stories of my so-called notoriety. I just didn't want to be that dad," unquote. As it turns out, Sheldon's concerns about being a substandard role model may have been well-founded. In April 2008, when Sheldon was in prison, his 14-year-old son was charged in connection with the death of a college student. Allegedly, Sheldon's son punched the college student in the back of the head, which caused the student to move into the path of an SUV and get fatally struck. The alleged attack was unprovoked. Item number 4. Sheldon recounted his experiences with several different types of mental health interventions, which he believed helped him in prison. For example, conflict resolution, deep breathing, and positive visualizations. He also ran a program called aggression replacement training. So Sheldon, the man who allegedly murdered and dismembered his friend after being released from prison, was an expert in replacing aggression. I wonder what he replaced it with. Perhaps these interventions failed because Sheldon mixed up the terms. For example, he practiced conflict visualization. This helped him prepare for a lethal encounter. Aggression breathing, which kept him focused and efficient while committing murder. Deep resolution, as in burying his victims deep. And positive replacement training. This allowed Sheldon to replace any redeeming qualities in his life with something negative. It's amazing how just moving a few words around can really change the meaning of these mental health interventions. Item number 5. One of Sheldon's motives for embarking on his magical journey of redemption was his desire to beat the system. He was not going to let the criminal justice system win. From his perspective, everybody was waiting for him to fail in his transformation. I suppose based on what happened after his release, Sheldon can argue that he did, in fact, beat the system. Based on his original sentence, he should have been in prison at the time when he allegedly murdered his friend. As far as the people waiting for him to fail, Sheldon's mind should be at ease. They don't have to wait any longer. Item number 6, what do I think happened in this case? This is just a theory, my opinion. Sheldon Johnson is a dangerous criminal who was willing to make some changes in prison to better himself because he really didn't have any other choice. He was motivated by his pain. There was no genuine interest in redemption or becoming a productive member of society. Sheldon simply made a calculation. He realized that playing by the rules was more beneficial for him. Learning how to say the right things and completing various programs represented the key to getting out of prison. Sheldon played along and pretended to have insight, like when he talked about how he couldn't see the long-term consequences of his behavior when he was young, but now he realized the error of his ways. There would be no returning to criminal behavior because of the wisdom he had obtained in prison. The performance that Sheldon offered was convincing, and he was granted his freedom. After this, he continued with his self-improvement mission, but at the same time, he was being tempted by criminal opportunities all around him. He quickly reverted back to his old self, grandiose, arrogant, self-centered, aggressive, impulsive, irresponsible, and violent. One could argue that Sheldon turned his life around 180 degrees. Twice. If he was only better at geometry, he could have predicted his final destination. It was right where he started. Sheldon said that when he first went to prison, he thought he would die there. At least he was right about one thing. Now moving to my final thoughts. Sheldon complained that he spent 25 years in the bowels of hell. What he failed to mention was his contribution to the inferno. It was people like Sheldon who made prison miserable. He was like a mobile hell. Wherever he went, he brought unspeakable horror. Sheldon wanted people to believe that his incarceration was unjust, that a judge unfairly locked him up and threw away the key. As it turns out, Sheldon's story is a reminder of exactly why some people need to be incarcerated. Sometimes prison does teach people how to be dangerous offenders, but most of the time, people who are sent to prison have already attained this level of education. Those are my thoughts on the case of Sheldon Johnson. Please put any opinions and thoughts in the comment section. They always generate an interesting dialogue. As always, I hope you found my analysis of this topic to be informative. Thanks for watching.